Hey everyone, good evening. Cool. I am really happy to be here and be beginning. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to show off a few essays from my collection of essays that worked last year at T14 schools. I know not everyone watching this is going to be entirely focused on the T14, but I do think that looking at the essays that work the best at the most competitive schools will give you a good framework for how to approach essays at schools in general. So I also have essays you guys submitted that I'll be looking at. I got about 65 of them, so I'm going to start at the top, go through. Obviously, I'm not going to hit them all. What I'm mostly going to be doing is using them to demonstrate some points I think are important to understand when you're putting these things together. So without further ado, let's start with one of the essays that that did well last cycle. This is actually kind of a whole thing. Let me share my screen. Cool. Hey, hello. Cool. So here we go. This, I'm calling this person Ruth. Ruth had a 3.7 in poli-sci, a 175, so excellent LSAT score, but had 4 previous takes in the 160s. So definitely the 175 was the most recent and kind of the outlier. She had 2 years of work experience in policy research. She was a reapplicant, and she was ultimately admitted to Harvard with this application. Yeah, and I'll try to answer questions as I go. Is it necessary to give the document a title? Not a title in like the sense that Moby Dick is a title. You need to say personal statement at the top, or what the school calls it. Not like this. Look at the example in the next essay I'll show you. But anyway, I think the reason I wanted to start with Ruth's essay is if you've been following kind of what I post on Reddit and my weekly classes on the 7Sage live stream, you'll hear me talk a lot about the voicey intellectual essay, the voicey intellectual autobiography, or the TED Talk essay. And this is the essay that I think is kind of the gold standard in a lot of cases for applying to law school and really applying to all kinds of programs, but particularly law school. So let's start off with what Ruth is doing here. So I'll zoom in a bit. This is statement of purpose. So Harvard's application is you're submitting 2 essays. You're submitting a statement of purpose and a statement of perspective. They're kind of like the personal statement and then the diversity statement at some other schools, or what they used to be called. So the statement of purpose is fundamentally an essay that is, why do you want to go to law school? You can view this as the basic prompt of every law school personal statement essay. It is, tell me who you are while explaining why you want to go to law school. Do I know what kind of school this applicant attended for undergrad? Yes, that will actually become very obvious in the essay. So she begins, I've always been fascinated with workplace cultures. People who have seemingly nothing in common, who would not interact outside of the office, discover their similarities in a break room. I love this opening. And the reason why I love this opening is because it's one, I'm interested in, like, it's always kind of like a bet, like, look at how this essay will end up being about law school. It's kind of cool when it starts far away and then it comes like with inevitability to, why is this person going to law school? I also like this because it's kind of what I describe as like the TED Talk opening, or like the TED Talk essay, where you're kind of imagining the speaker on stage just like going into a rant, going into a talk about a certain topic, and the topic is going to be with us throughout the rest of the essay. This is actually an essay about workplace culture. And what the applicant is doing is she's using her thoughts about workplace culture in order to talk about different workplaces she's been in, give us a tour of her life, and kind of like show that she's intellectual, show that she's thinking about certain things. Um, I grew up in Ames, Iowa, surrounded, yes, by cornfields, but also with all the benefits of a college town, an actually functional public transit system, friends whose parents came from as far away as Indonesia to obtain a graduate degree, and hipster coffee shops. Like, again, you're picking three examples here that are just like, even if I haven't been to Ames, and this is actually not about Ames. I've just kind of swapped which college town it's about, but it's a close analog. Um, you feel like you know this person, or you feel like you know Ames. Hipster coffee shops, public transit, Indonesia, but we're surrounded by cornfields. That's a vibe. Um, cool. I thought this rather idyllic upbringing exposed me to different viewpoints, but it wasn't until my job at a local movie theater that I got to know that the kids who grew up, or got to know the kids who grew up in small towns outside of mine, the kids who had bring your tractor to school days, and maybe not so lovingly referred to my town as the People's Republic of Ames. Over 8-hour weekend shifts, we sold extra buttery popcorn, nice detail, with stale candy, fought never ending lines that wrapped around the building for every new Marvel movie, and discussed our political beliefs. It was 2016, and tensions were high. But I was learning how to focus on similarities with people I was predisposed to disagree with. Um, so, okay. Nice opening. We get a sense of who she is. We get this like connecting across differences thing. Then I really like this turn. And I'm not going to go like line by line through the rest of the essay. I'm going to put the essay up online and I'll put links out for it. But moving to Washington, D.C. to work full time at this institute marked the first time I lived somewhere other than my hometown. So we're beginning in earlier life to get a sense of where she's come from. And then we're getting a sense of, okay, this is where she's going. She's going to DC. Um, she's from a state school. She's in this place where seemingly everyone is from an Ivy League background. And she's even told, like, actually, maybe keep your school off your resume when you're applying to this job. So she's kind of like that fish out of water. And yeah. Now, she goes from wondering how she will fit in to then um, slowly, I began to introduce my colleagues to the wonderful world of Big Ten football in a tiny Midwest style bar and the joy of washing down Detroit style pizza and Chicago hot dogs with Malort. Um, so, again, excellent details here. And we have this sense that she's kind of this like whimsome friend maker, which I'll show kind of my theory for what you really want to be including in these personal statements as we go. But actually, I'll just pull it up now. So yeah, this is like my big chart of explanations of things. So bear with me. So when someone is reading your law school application, there's really almost this like hierarchy of needs. And the first is that it really just needs to make sense. Like they need to read your application, and at the end of reading your application, they will ask themselves, why is this person applying to law school? And it needs to make utter sense to them. Like they can't have this hesitation of, oh, I guess they like the law. Like you need to have a concrete answer for why you're going to law school. It doesn't need to be the whole essay, but the essay should like arrive at it in grand style. This second thing that I think is, so this is like, if you're not doing this, you're not performing the basic function of the personal statement. This is like the second most important thing, which is just to show them that you can thrive. And I think a lot of people get sidetracked here to maybe trying to show why they're like deserving or why they've overcome things. Maybe, you know, you focus on showing why you've struggled. But really what I want to see is how can you thrive? Like, how can you thrive academically, professionally, socially, intellectually? Like, how are you someone who's just like, almost like bubbly, bright, like going to contribute like really nicely to the school. And I think that that's what Ruth is doing in this essay. That's like what's happening here. Like I was thrown fish out of water. I'm in this elite place, but I'm from a farm town. But I'm like bringing the farm town with me. I'm like changing the culture in this cool, positive way. This just makes me really like her. Um, and again, but she's learning about like Burns Nights and this kind of like hoity-toity stuff that is happening at this institute in DC that she's at. So they're mixing. Then the story of I love workplace culture becomes about um, she joins the union bargaining team at her work, and when she's really young, she takes a leadership role in the union, and she's like advocating for people who are like far older and like more important than she is in the organization. And this is where you really start to see like law school peaking in. By this point in the personal statement, like top of page 2, I really want to start feeling like I know that law school is going to happen and like that we're going to get there. So this union thing is like setting up this theme of advocacy. Um, Now, this line is like kind of I think why this essay of like beginning in like the movie theater and like talking about workplace culture really. It's ironic that so much of my work life has been about finding common ground with people from different backgrounds, and yet a core part of my job writing might be what might be the world's most important and most dysfunctional workplace. I love Congress. It's fascinating how yada yada yada. So she's talking about workplaces, and then she's looking at Congress as a workplace. And this to me is like really showing me how she thinks. Like to look at the U.S. Congress and put it through the lens of a dysfunctional workplace um, is just like a smart move. It's interesting. Um, and then she talks about how she's been doing congressional research, and then we come down here, and we're learning that she has an interest in administrative law, and how that kind of interacts. Like Congress's dysfunction interacts with administrative law. She's learned some things about it, and then she kind of has this like money line at the end. I've heard that as a lawyer, it can sometimes feel like you live at work, but in my eyes, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. So this is an essay about kind of how she just loves like workplace culture, connecting with colleagues, but it becomes this explanation for why like administrative law is interesting to her. And I leave the essay like really understanding what she wants to do as a lawyer and also really understanding the kind of person I would get if I admitted her. I'm getting someone who makes connections, who like can be a fish out of water. Um, Questions about this? Um, chat. Yeah, the stream will be saved to the channel. Yeah, I'll upload it as well. Cool. All right, continuing on. Let's because this is a successful Harvard application, let's look at her statement of perspective as well, because that's like we're not going to go fully through it. We're just going to look at the beginning. But for people who so if you're applying to Harvard and if you're applying to Vanderbilt and a few other schools, they're probably going to make you write a statement of perspective. So it used to be that schools would give you the option to write a diversity statement. And if you kind of had an obvious reason to write it, you would write it. Now, because of the changes with the Supreme Court and things like that, and schools being like a lot kind of dodgier on the issue of diversity, some schools fix this by making everyone write a perspective essay so that like they don't get accused of like soliciting diversity statements only from underrepresented minorities. So in one sense, like what Harvard really wants to do with the statement of perspective is probably like work towards admitting a diverse class within the limits of the modern era and kind of what they're allowed to do. But it's a space you need to use if you're applying, and you need to use it well because the competition is really fierce. So a lot of people come into this and they're like, well, I'm not diverse, I'm not a racial minority, I'm not like a gender or sexual minority. Like, how do I approach this? Ruth wrote her statement of perspective about the Great Lakes. And this is like a pretty weird topic. we begin on how she used to go to this island in Lake Michigan when she was a child. Usually, going back into early life a lot isn't a good idea in a law school application. The beginning of the statement of perspective or the beginning of the diversity statement is the place where it's kind of most tolerated. Um, so yeah, we're here on Beaver Island. We're kind of getting this like it's kind of whimsical. It's kind of like Jules Verne. Like we're learning about stories of famous shipwrecks. We're like watching the waves. It's like it feels comfy. It feels nice. Um, then um, we get this point of I love the Great Lakes. They're overlooked by a lot of people. In fact, when I talk about how important the Great Lakes are to people, they're like surprised by it. And I'm from a flyover state. I'm from the Midwest. The Great Lakes are important in the Midwest. Um, and actually, like now that I've lived in the East, I appreciate like my Midwestern background, how that gives me a different perspective. So we're really doing like a regional diversity angle. Um, like growing up, I love the Sweet Corn Festival. Now in DC, I can take the metro and go see Van Gogh paintings for free. This is someone who is walking between worlds. Um, and also, the Great Lakes are important in administrative law because, like, the jurisdiction of them is split between different states, and there are actually some like interesting legal quandaries related to the Great Lakes. Like this Asian carp thing is involves the law in some way that she explains in this paragraph. Um, then this is like the most significant line. I'm interested in those areas of the law that might be considered flyover issues. So she's connecting this idea of her background and like where she grew up, flyover state, people kind of turned their nose up at the Great Lakes, at like her farm town. But um, actually, it's these issues that other people ignore or think are kind of like humdrum flyover that she loves. And she talks about some of those things. Um, and she talks about how, like, actually, a lot of the law is not that exciting, but I'm someone who is fascinated by issues that a lot of people don't find that exciting. Then down here, we get the line um, at Harvard, I want to focus not on the issues and topics that get the most attention, but rather add a voice to the processes and procedures that make the most impact. That's a great line. Like, that's, what she is contributing to the school. And yeah, I think that this is really an A plus application. I wasn't surprised when she got it. So, any questions over there? So what if you don't have a concrete direction you want to go in law or have a specific instance you can lean on as to why you want to go to law school? You don't need to have a specific direction. And they know that when you get to your 1L, you will know more about the law on like week 3, or you will know like 10 times more about the law in week 3 than you do now. And like what the legal like career pathway is. So they're not looking for you to like commit to any specific interest in these things. I'm saying what I think what they're looking for you to do is like speak with an insider's voice to really like I want to read it and feel like I like what lawyers really do, and you're thoughtfully trying to figure out what you want to do as a lawyer, knowing that you don't fully know what lawyers do yet. Um, yeah, that's that answer. Cool. Let me look at some of your things. Let me pull that up. So, like I said, I got a lot of them. And we'll come back to some of the successful applications later. So here we have Elise writing to us. Oh, 4.0 looks like we don't have an LSAT back. She wants us to go harsh on her document. Let's see. So obviously this isn't formatted the right way, but um, it is hard for me to look past that. But I assume Elise knows that. Um, in an effort to fight climate injustice, I went undercover in a commercial real estate firm. That's cool. That's really cool. That's like a exciting intro. It began in high school. This does take the wind out of the sails. Like usually you don't want to be telling stories that happen in high school unless you're going to move really quickly past that. I was really excited by this line, but as soon as I know that it's in high school, I get less excited by it. Um, Now, if it's still the story you want to tell, I would just not super highlight the fact that it was in high school. Um, like, I would probably cut this line and then just go right to here. I stood outside Representative X's office, clutching talking points I researched for weeks. That could happen anytime. Draped in my mom's shoulder padded blazer. This is like this. This is self description that I look for. Um, so I, and this goes back to kind of what I'm talking about these like hierarchy of needs things. So first, I want to know that like okay, why you're going to law school makes sense. Then I want to know you can do well here. That's obvious. Um, and the reason why these two are up top, let me talk about this for a little bit, is the thing you need to understand about law schools and law school admissions offices is that admissions officers are there to protect the law school. They're there to read your files in order to guarantee certain outcomes or try to secure certain outcomes for the school. And like the most fundamental outcomes are um, the people we admit are going to come, they're going to finish the degree, meaning they're going to pay tuition or continue to take on debt for a sufficiently long time so that the business model of our university works. Um, and they will go back and get jobs so they can repay the debt they owe. And so that our law school can like thrive and be seen as a legitimate law school and not something that's just like a degree mill or something. So like this is like the fundamental job of a law school admissions officer. Um, People who actually want to come, like if you're applying, and I just don't understand why you're applying to law school. The fear they have is like, will you finish it? Do you really know you want to be here? Are you just kind of shopping around? Like you're maybe about to take on like $200,000 of debt, $300,000 of debt. Are you going to get buyer's remorse? And the modern university is a business and they just need like guaranteed customers, right? They need people where it makes sense that they're going to stay there. Like take it or leave it. Um, then they need to know you'll do well there. You're not going to be like homesick. You're going to like do your homework. You won't drop out. They'll continue to be able to like grade you fairly, and you'll contribute and you'll get a job. So these are the fundamental things. You also need to understand that the people reading your applications are humans. They read your whole file, even if you're way below the numbers. And they are there because there's a perception that your numbers alone are not enough to decide if you're a good fit for the law school. And because they're people, they do connect with the applications they read. Every admissions officer I talk to will actually get weepy eyed thinking about certain people they've admitted and certain like people they've met, students they've interacted with. They're human, you're human. This is a persuasive exercise. You're talking to people who are like faced with hundreds of kind of fairly qualified candidates, and they need to make occasionally kind of arbitrary choices about what to do. And just showing that you're human, connecting with them is super important. At a lot of law schools, when they finish reading your file, they ask the question, do I know this person? Like, do I feel like I know them? And if the answer is no, it no one is really going to advocate for you. Um, and you kind of remain a mystery. Like if they're reading your application and they feel like they haven't seen you, they're kind of like I would say nervous about admitting you. And the way you alleviate that is to give them the sense that that they do actually see you. So This line, it seems like a really minor line, but draped in my mom's shoulder padded blazer. Like this is a very effective moment of self-description because like I can kind of see the person and I know that they're not arrogant because they're like it's like kind of silly and like I'm remembering moments where like I like wore a suit for the first time or like had to dress for a job for the first time and like the vulnerability I had in that moment and I remember overcoming it. Like that's what I feel when I read this line and whenever I'm reading someone's file, I always kind of put a pin in the moment where I first start to like them. And this is where I like this person, and it's super early on. And from the rest of the essay, because I like this person, I want to like the rest of their essay, and I want their story to make sense. If I like got to here and I dislike the person because of some detail, or I got to here and I still didn't like them, I wouldn't be like trying to justify an admit if it's a borderline situation. Um, Hopefully that makes sense. Um, I could actually spiral out from here, and we could look briefly at another example, which I think is actually the best self description I read last year, and kind of the hundreds of applications I reviewed. Um, let's look at that. So this is the application of someone last year, KJD. Um, Oh, Microsoft Edge. Hello. KJD, high 160s, 3.8, STEM major. This feels like a very common situation for people. So high 160s, 3.8. This is someone who's done well, but in the world of like hyper grade inflation and like LSAT score inflation, and not really inflation, but just like way more people grinding out the test, trying to get into the 170s. This is under medians at every top school, at every T14 school. Under both medians at every T14 school. This person was not an underrepresented minority, was an overrepresented minority, and admitted to our top choice T10 school. Yeah. So yeah, let's look at just these first two paragraphs. My freshman year RA famously imposed a bespoke curfew on me, not for late night partying, but for my laugh. Variously described as a female Santa Claus and a tea kettle on the brink of explosion, my distinctive chortle was apparently loud enough to jolt nearby innocents, I love that, nearby innocents, from their slumber. My roommates recommended a lenient sentence: no Annie laughs after 11 p.m. As the semester progressed, however, neighbors who'd valued quiet now sought greater connection. What had once kept them awake began to draw them in. Whether over board game chaos, impromptu guitar sing-alongs, or emergency 2 a.m. cookie runs, just imagine how much you kind of get to know this person from the phrase emergency in quotes 2 a.m. cookie runs, and how much it kind of like might remind you of your early days in college. That's detail efficiency. We laughed until tears streamed down our faces, the soundtracks to our late night talks and silly moments. I read this and I loved this person. Like this like laughing fun person who was like told, actually, your laugh is so loud, please don't laugh late at night. Like this is someone you want to be friends with instantly. I start reading this and I advocate for this person for the entire rest of the essay. Then we have the turn. I now carry that laughter into Alva Belmont Place, where I volunteer with women and children seeking emergency shelter from domestic abuse. Um, let's just get to here because I think this is tutoring kids, yada yada. So this work is deeply personal. In high school, I was a victim of sexual abuse, so I understand the feeling of helplessness that can induce silence. Volunteering at Ava Belmont lends my voice to women who aren't able to speak out yet. And then we kind of learn about why she went to STEM first, and then that becomes why she's going to law. But the thing here is From the first 2 paragraphs, I feel like I utterly understand her. I'm convinced that she's going to socially thrive in law school, and if I am an admissions officer reading this, I probably personally just want her to do well. And because she's under both medians, this is something I talk about in my streams a lot, um, of, like, how schools actually kinda think about medians. Um, let's come up here. So yeah. So I have a long version of this, which is like kind of how medians really work and how schools think about them, and you're kind of sorted into buckets. Um, the kind of upshot of this is that the relationship between your numbers and your narrative is your numbers are going to position you in kind of one of these buckets. Um, and it's your narrative, and like within that bucket, you're compared to the other people kind of implicitly. Um, because like the gold bucket is for people who are above both medians. So admitting someone from the gold bucket, someone above both medians, there are kind of different questions they ask when you're in this position. Like this is where YX actually could become kind of important as certain schools who are trying to yield protect you. I can talk more about that later. Yeah, the concerns here are different. The concerns for like the splitter and the reverse splitter are different. The strategies are kind of different. Um, Now, if you're below both medians, it doesn't make a difference if like you're trying to get into UVA and you're at a 170 and like a 3.8, or you're at like a 165 and a 3.5. Like these are both hanging out together in the below both median category. They each time you admit one of these people, or rather, each time one of these people enroll in your school, um, you need one of these people to also be there so that the median doesn't go down. That's math. Um, but the problem is like these people might go to Yale instead, or might go to other places instead. These people, if they're below both medians, you're probably going to be the best school they get into, and so they'll come. So you can like admit 10 times as many of these people as these people. You need to be more picky. Um, so I call this the shopping bag because you kind of have to imagine the admissions office coming through and like shopping for people. They have a limited budget. They're going to take some people to fit like demographics or employment goals. But they're also going to like save some splurge purchases for people they just really love. They think are solid all around, but they're below both medians, so they're a double hit on the school's median. This was Annie's situation, and yeah, someone read her application and advocated for her. They liked her enough to be like, look, she's actually below both medians. We need to give a scholarship and steal someone from Harvard in order to balance her out, but she's worth it. And yeah, so that's Annie. Yeah. The rest of the story is interesting, but I'll put this online. But cool. Questions so far? You'll cry if I don't read yours. I'll try to get to it. Do I need to write a CNF statement for a vaping infraction? That's funny. I mean, it's not funny. I'm sorry that happened to you, but it depends. You need to read the language of how the school is describing its character fitness questions. Some of them are so broad that it includes like traffic things, parking tickets. Some of them are much more limited. Do you recommend avoiding talking about early childhood experiences in the intro to the state SOP? SOPs could be statement of purpose or statement of perspective. Statement of perspective, definitely. It happens where it is worth it, but it's like 9 times out of 10. My advice is to not do it. Statement of perspective is okay, but you need to get past childhood quickly. Do admissions officers prefer a more approachable tone like these two, or a more professional tone if no longer KJD? I would say that as you go up the rankings, like if you're applying to the T like 100 and you're lower down the T100 list, um, I think what they're rating, they're like asking, can this person be professional? And so you probably want to sound professional. When you're applying to elite schools, the assumption is that you're going to be very good at being professional. So I think the question is more like, can this person like be kind of well-rounded and cool? Like, can they be human and kind of be that kind of like softer form of intellectual? Um, I definitely see people make the mistake of sounding too formal more often than I see people make the mistake of sounding not formal enough. If you look at these essays that I really like, um, they're conversational, they're warm. The writing could kind of be the writing like in the New Yorker or like Harper's or something. Um, yeah, it's just like nice writing where I really read both of these and I'm just convinced that they're smart, interesting people, but they're not like, referencing Kant or something. Like they're it's understated. It's nice. Um, um, cool. Um, do I review personal statements beyond this? Yeah. So Seven Sage has a whole admissions consulting program. I'm the coordinator of it. In the link or in the description of the video, you'll see a link to like a free consultation to talk about it. So check that out, and if you want some essay help, click on the link. Cool. So let's go back. I forgot where I even was. I was tearing apart this one. So I like it so far, is what I'm saying. That is the conclusion. This high school thing, I think is a mistake. I think it's cooler if you just take it out. My eye is being drawn downward to the word Marx, which is an interesting word to put into this essay. So I'm gonna skim. So we're doing something interesting. We're doing like this is really cool that we're doing this big mobilization thing, and again, my instinct is to just like not make a big deal of the fact that it began in high school. That's like my major change so far. Um, Also, these like these like one sentence paragraphs are like, they're kind of like style. It's not really the genre to do that here, but it's kind of bold. I like it. Like this, I see this person as like a confident, cool writer. Um, um, I could quote Marx on surplus value, but couldn't explain how capital actually moved through a city. I like this. This is kind of getting into like politics and how you write about your politics in personal statements. You certainly can be political. I mean, this year there's definitely a vibe shift with universities. I think universities now, when they read applications, they imagine like what it like they imagine I mean I talk to people who imagine this. They imagine that the Trump administration will give them all of their admissions files and read them and justify decisions they've made. So uh, they're a little dodgier about politics this year, I think. Mentioning Marx, uh, the reason why I like it is because it's almost like this is almost like a de-radicalization sentence. So I like this person when I read this sentence. Like I could quote this, but I couldn't understand this thing more practical. It seems humble. It seems cool. I like the tone of this. When I jump down here, my eye is drawn to as Sartre might frame it. That's probably a little too much. Again, the outside of like Yale, Stanford, Harvard, the people reading these applications are not law school professors. Law school professors hated reading applications, and they kind of like fought to be released from that duty decades ago. The people you need to imagine reading your applications are the people who worked at your undergrad's career office or like admissions office, like the like the that class of professional university bureaucrat is the audience of most essays. So the class of professional university bureaucrat is like not the most into references to philosophers, I would say. Um, if you really have the numbers for like Yale, that is a different conversation. What they're looking for is different. Um, the tone is good. Let me down here. At the same time, my identity evolved into a hybrid, part activist driven by urgency and persuasion, part analyst, compelled to turn data. I like this. I really like this person's tone. Actually, I love this person's tone. I don't usually like tones right away. Um, I do think that like how to tell this activism story. Again, some law schools like got freaked out by like the Columbia stuff and the Berkeley stuff with like the Israel Palestine encampments and things. Like again, your audience are bureaucrats who are protecting a university that is increasingly a business. So that is your audience. It's kind of like the risk prevention officers you are writing to. So keep that in mind when you write about activism. Again, on a personal level, all of these people, or a lot of these people, are like probably down with a lot of what your activism might be about. But like professionally, they need to be kind of nervous. So I think this is coming across well. I'm not going to go like through it with a fine tooth comb, but this is a really nice tone. I'm very happy with this. Okay, AC. Okay, so we're 167, 3.7. So want some T14. These numbers, these are very hard T14 numbers. It's actually easier. Like if this needs to be a 171 basically. And the story needs to be great. This is like I think below the 25th percentile for T14 schools, every T14 schools, and it's just that like URM maybe in previous years. But like this LSAT needs to be higher. But Florida schools, yes, though I mean these medians are kind of low for a lot of law schools now. So the thing you need to be thinking about is like you need to give them at least one numerical reason why they can admit you. Like you need to be at one of the medians they are targeting, because schools care about their medians because their medians impact their rankings, and their rankings impact the choices students make, and the choices students make determines like how much of a scholarship budget schools need in order to have the class they want. So it impacts their bottom line. There are studies that show like they lose like hundreds of thousands of dollars when they slip ranking points because of customer behavior. So yeah, you usually need to give them one excuse or be close enough and make them love you. So this is like a Hail Mary situation, kind of. My mom always tells me about El Bombo. I have a vague memory that I've heard El Bombo before, but I don't remember what it is. Maybe I don't know what it is. So these are really nice details. I like this. This reads a lot more like a statement of perspective or a diversity statement. We're getting like in the first paragraph, we're getting this kind of we're getting like them. I think as a child, we're getting cultural background, and we're getting like grandma. We're getting leaving Cuba. Like this is a perspective statement. It could be that, okay, that's what El Bombo is. It could be that this thing is the reason why you want to go to law school. So you can write about your cultural background in your statement of purpose. It's just that like you don't want to be writing about your early life and relatives and like the family stories that frequently. I would say. Um, I think you want to save that, and you want to introduce yourself to them kind of more on your own terms as like an adult. Um, the writing is good though. Yeah, it's like when we're looking at paragraph 3 and and paragraph 3 is beginning my dad. Like this is just like sort of a misstep. Like we are still telling this story. Like I am down here and I have learned mostly about this applicant's family. And again, if I'm reading this, I am a university bureaucrat trying to learn things about you. And I've learned that you're a good writer, that you have Cuban ancestry, and then I've learned things about your parents. Um, um, we move constantly. Again, this is like I like that. I'm learning something about you. It is kind of diversity statement material. Um, I'm looking for the why law. A story shape the truth. Okay. Um, um, oh, okay. Look, here we have Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office. That, like, all right, here. That, like, if I was talking to this person, um, I would try to figure out like what's interesting about this. Um, like sometimes what you do is you find like one anecdote from like an internship or job and kind of begin on that. I think that often puts a little too much pressure on that one story to be good. And what you want to do is like kind of start with a question of like what wouldn't people know about this, or like what did you learn, or kind of like what theme was in your mind when you were in this job, kind of like the workplace thing we saw in that example. And then kind of go from there. But I definitely do think the story is beginning more down here, and I would save this stuff for a perspective statement. But even as a perspective statement, it's vivid. I'm getting the sense of like the question I have is like, how does how did receiving these stories kind of impact your life? I'm sure there are indications of that. It's just like not enough. Again, your audience is people reading these in 10 minutes, so like I was like focus on like the beginning of paragraphs too. Um, like like if paragraphs in a row beginning with like other people are just like not 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 great. Um, cool. Let's go to K. Um, let's actually take a question. I am also really wondering about how heavier themes are perceived. I would like to talk about the barriers to access I face, but don't want to sound like a downer. I think it's yeah. I would say talk about it without sounding like a downer. Like even I would say even essays about like really heavy things. Um, it's kind of this shift because I think when you're an undergrad, it's like you're writing a lot of essays or you're doing a lot of reflection in a way where like you're hyper tuned to pointing out systemic barriers and inequalities and things like that. And then when you go to law school and you're like you're going to this professional degree program and you're pitching yourself as someone who's going to do really well at a job and make good connections, things like that. Suddenly there's like this rug pull where like the systemic barrier thing, like you really need to focus on the I have overcome um, systemic barriers if you're going to talk about that, not I have faced them. I think, like I think like talking about facing them is valuable for how they're assessing the diversity of their class, but I think you want to imagine like what am I leaving them with? Like am I leaving them with the impression that I am like firm ready? I am like ready to go to law school. I am ready to get a job at a law firm. And like these things I've faced have like fortified me and have made me better. So like it's like ironic and it's weird to have to do it, but like even the most terrible things that have happened to you, if you're writing about them in the context of an application essay, you you want to portray them as like, and they made me stronger. And to do that in a way that's not like too like twee or unbelievable, I would say. Um, yeah. Um, well, um, so okay. Did I wait? Did I actually click on this? Okay, cool. Oh no, I want to look. Oh, great numbers. Okay. Um, 178. Yeah, I mean these are T4. I mean these are great numbers. Mostly T30 and above. I would assume you could get a T14 if you tell the right story and have the right experience. Oh, this is a statement of perspective. That's interesting. Okay. So this is whenever I say this, I think, oh, this person's thinking about their Harvard app. So we'll look at a statement of perspective. The first time one of my joints dislocated, I was 23 years old, doing push-ups in my bedroom. Okay. I'd been a personal trainer, weightlifting and summiting mountains for years, so I knew my limits. This is like, again, in terms of like this is like my first like glimpse of you, and I kind of want this to be more specific and maybe like a little more playful or like almost self-deprecating in a way. I've read a lot of gym stories, I would say, and I've yet to find the gym story that I've loved and that I've seen like I've seen them perform at par, but I still haven't encountered the like, yeah, this is a super value add thing. Um, um, oh, okay. So yeah, this is like the I like this quote. Usually I don't like quotes, but this is kind of cool. In medical school, they're taught if you hear hooves, think horses, not zebras. It's like reminds me of House, which I've never seen, but I think that is kind of something. This seems nice. Okay, we have some hypermobility syndrome. I like that this tone is good. I like this tone. Um, um, I'm kind of going forward because we're getting a little too like play by play. Even though Harvard is giving you 2 pages, like you really want to probably just use one, unless you're doing like 2 or 3 different like purposes with that essay, like the Beaver Island essay we were looking at. It was both this like that flyover state issue, and then it was more about legal interests. It was like kind of 2 reasons. That's why it went 2 pages. This maybe that's what's happening, but I do find myself getting bored as I'm skimming it. So I think it's better at 1 page. Um, um, like this is kind of like the intersectionality thing, right? Like the South has a particular. I would almost begin here. I think this is actually a really cool thing. Like I live in the South, and we are disabled by environmental issues, and I'm thinking about disability. Like that's like blending things in an interesting way. I would at least explore beginning there. Sounds like it's not that. It's mostly about other people. That's my only concern. Disabled bodies and damaged landscapes are failed. That's interesting writing. I like it. Um, I like this line a lot. Disabled lawyers like myself must be better represented in environmental justice because of our unique bond. I really like this. This is where everything comes together. I want to get here sooner, and this combination of like environmental law, disability stuff, that's a cool combination. Get to it more quickly, I would say. Um, Um, oh, can you, what? Um, oh, advice for Canadian schools. I'll I'll touch on that. Well, I think what they want is a little more straightforward. It used to be more divergent. American schools used to have more whimsical taste for what they were looking for. Now I think they want like a degree, more serious essays. That's kind of what I'm highlighting here. They're less divergent now. Um, but like your U of T application is basically like the American law school application stuff. So if you're applying to U of T, maybe start there. I always tell people apply to U of T first, University of Toronto first, and then like cut that into the other essays. That's kind of efficient. Um, um, oh no, my school said 2 to 3 pages and I wrote three. So I think people go into it with this attitude of like the school is allowing me to write um, 3 pages. Why not fill them? There are some exceptions. Like if you're applying to Berkeley, they legitimately want you to use most of the space they give you, or like they're one of those schools that kind of wants to feel like you know that they're special, and so you've like written this essay for them. um like law school officers will sit there and know that everyone applies to 10 schools, and they'll still want that feeling of like, oh, you applied just for me. But that doesn't mean just like putting the word like UVA at the end of your essay. It's um like jumping through whatever hoop they care about. Berkeley cares about that a lot, I would say. Other schools like what, like Duke says 2 to 3, NYU gives you no limit. Um, Again, imagine a law school admissions officer as like reading 50 of these in an evening on their couch while their kids are screaming. And they are going to spend the same amount of time on your file, whether you've submitted a bunch of extra essays or not, whether your things are super long or not. They're just going to kind of change how long they spend going back through and like kind of deliberating their decision. Um, so they always say like, "Oh, respect our time." So they do want to see you jump through like a little hoop, but they do like brevity, I would say. They really do like brevity. Um, I would say like the 2 page 11-point font Times New Roman personal statement is what you should do for a lot of schools, most schools, with some exceptions. Okay, since adcons are risk mitigation officers, would you not recommend speaking on civil rights advocacy? No, no. They love civil rights advocacy. Um, you, they love people who believe in causes and like have politics. I'll have a wide range of politics, as long as it's like I want to do my politics through the lens of a legal career that is reasonable for me to obtain. And if you're applying to T14, if you're a serious candidate for T14 schools, doing like civil rights stuff, like there is a very competitive path to end up doing some of that. It is like a brutal competitive path, like compared to just going to work for a corporation. Like if you want to do like good works on the highest levels, it is fiercely competitive. But doing like direct services work, they need a bunch of people doing that. It's just like it's a different kind of deal. Um, so I wouldn't hide, like I really would not hide your politics and what you want to do, and the causes you want to work on. What I would say is, one, most people who are lawyers are not really working on causes. So the majority of you should not be writing change the world essays. I would only be writing those if you've like really dived into it. You've like done some like serious like work in the field, even if that's just internships, and you actually know how like brutal and competitive and like prestige oriented like an organization like the ACLU might be. Um, um, so yeah, I see a lot of people have these like, oh, I want to go to law to like make big systems change stuff, and it comes across as naive because it unless it doesn't, like unless you know what you're talking about. Um, But I would also say you shouldn't hide your politics, almost no matter what your politics are. Like top schools need conservatives too, and that's the thing. I think compared to undergrad, um, like undergrad at elite schools, it is like kind of like politically homogenous, but elite law schools are less. I mean, they need lawyers doing all kinds of things. Lawyering is kind of like a conservative position in a lot of ways. It's like kind of working within the system to do certain things. Yada yada. It's like lawyers become like a little more um, truncated in what they think is possible. I think I see that with my activist friends who became lawyers. Um, but yeah. So the moral of the story is don't hide your politics, but also if you're applying to law school, mostly to make like big system change stuff, just like really try to know what you're talking about and like see if a legal career makes sense for that reason. Um, um, cool. Can I write about a learning disability for personal statement? Um, I don't know. It could come across as good. I tend to think that universities are kind of cynical and that um, I would not reveal anything to them that would make them question, even if they're not allowed to question for those reasons, how well you'll do in school. Um, but if it's something you're going to disclose anyway, and I leave the essay really convinced, like, okay, I believe you're going to do well. Um, like I believe you've like found the right mechanisms for dealing with this learning disability. Then that's okay. Oh, we are out of time, but I will continue doing this, and I'll try to get through more of the essays next time. Um, I'll take a few more questions if there are more questions in the chat. Um, Um, I worked for 3 years and was a foster parent to one of my students during this time. Wow, Teach for the TFA is Teach for America. I assume. Should I not mention that to stay away from change? I mean, no, that's really cool. I read that and I think instantly that being a foster parent through your Teach for America job is like really intense. You sound mature. It sounds like you like try to carry the world on your shoulders. Um, yeah, I don't want to scare people away from like writing about causes they believe in. You also need to be thinking like what does the career path for people who want to do this thing look like? And can I one look up that career path and think I still want to do it and be realistic about how competitive it might be? And two, like well, I forget what two was, but two was something. Um, um, can we get the chart that you showed briefly? I will hand out my chart eventually. I am adding more to the chart, so I want to finish my chart first. Non-traditional upbringing, would it be bad to focus on this from a perceptive statement? No, non-traditional upbringing, like again, you can talk about how the perspective statement is the like where does my worldview come from essay. The origin of the worldview is part of that. You really want to spend a lot of the essay talking about like, what did this do for me as an adult, and what will it do for me in the future at law school or beyond as a lawyer? Um, good. Well, thank you, everyone. Again, if you're looking for essay help um, or talking to admissions officers or anything like that, check out the link below. We can talk to you about the options we have. We also have a lot of free resources on our site. And I will be back probably next week to go through more. I'll post about it in all the places I posted about it this time. Thank you, everyone.